Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a sci-fi action movie called In Time. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in the year 2169, where people are genetically engineered to stop aging on their 25th birthdays. After that, everyone is given one free year to live, and a timer on their forearm keeps track of their remaining lifespan. When it reaches 0, the person times out and instantly dies. Time has also replaced money and is used in transactions directly between people or stored in capsules. Furthermore, the United States is divided into time zones, Dayton being the poorest, while New Greenwich is the richest, where people are effectively immortal. Currently, a young factory worker named Will Salas lives a difficult life with his mother Rachel in a tiny apartment in Dayton. Will and his best friend Borel, what are these names, work at a local factory and are paid by the day, but the administration regularly comes up with an excuse to deduct their pay for some reason or another. One evening, Will goes to a bar to let off some steam after work. If it's anywhere near as expensive as Canada, a pint will cost him 20 years. He notices a rich man named Henry who has been buying free drinks for everyone. Will even overhears a girl say that Henry has a whole century in his timer. Unfortunately, the rich guy's careless show of wealth is noticed by a group of local gangsters called the Minutemen. The gang leader, Fortis, confronts Henry and challenges him to a duel called Time Fight. Everyone else in the bar runs away except for Will, who hides at the back to see what'll happen. Henry, in the meantime, accepts the challenge, but asks for a moment in the bathroom first. One of the gang members then accompanies him to the washroom. Will takes this chance to knock the gangster out and escape with Henry through the back door. They then rush inside a nearby factory and lock the door. Following this, Will questions what a rich guy is doing in a place like Dayton. Henry replies that he left New Greenwich because he's 105 years old and is tired of living. He explains that the rich keep on raising taxes and hoard time, which eventually increases the cost of living in the ghetto. After having a lengthy conversation about their lives, the two men eventually fall asleep. Early the next morning, Henry awakens first and does something shocking. He passes all of his time to Will and only keeps 5 minutes to himself. When Will wakes up sometime later, he is shocked to discover that the number on his timer has gone up significantly. He then looks out of a window and sees Henry sitting on a bridge all by himself. Will realizes what's going on, says,
"It's gonna be me."
But before he can take action, Henry times out and his lifeless body drops into the river below. The scene then cuts to the evening, where Will waits for his mother at the bus stop to return from work, but she doesn't turn up, even after several hours. It turns out Rachel, who only has an hour and a half left, can't afford a bus ride because the fares went up all of a sudden. It's a 2-hour walk to return home, meaning Rachel must run if she wants to see her son again. Will also starts running when he realizes what's going on. After a while, the mother and son collide into each other in the middle of the street, but it's too late, and Rachel tragically times out in Will's arms. "Say something," says Will. In the meantime, the police force known as Timekeepers finds Henry's body in the river. The investigating officer, Agent Leon, is sure that this is a murder and orders his men to check the security footage from a nearby CCTV. Because of the angle of the cameras, the police can't see Henry falling down. They do, however, see Will's face in the footage and assume that he's behind the crime. Will didn't know those were cameras. He thought they were mirrors. Meanwhile, a devastated Will goes on a spending spree to get over the tragedy of his mother's death. He hires a limo using his newfound wealth and heads towards New Greenwich. Once he makes it to the city, he stays in a nice hotel where his presence is noticed by a young socialite girl named Sylvia. The Timekeepers are also able to track down his location, as Will has crossed too many time zones in a few hours. That evening, Will gets decked out in a brand new suit and tie and goes to a casino. He quickly joins a poker table being hosted by Philippe Weiss, an ultra-rich businessman whose company controls the time system through banks. Sylvia, who is Weiss's daughter, also comes to the table to watch. Bolstered by her presence, Will starts taking high risks and even bets everything that he has. This turns out to be an excellent gamble because Will wins the game. He also manages to impress Weiss, who invites him to a grand party at his mansion. The next day, Will buys a very expensive car and drives to Weiss's party. Sylvia is very curious about this new hotshot in town who's bringing sexy back and invites him to dance. She reveals that she can see from his mannerisms that he's from the ghetto. However, Sylvia says that she also envies people from that part of the country, because she lives a sanitized life without real freedom. Meth addiction and poverty, now that's freedom. The girl wishes she could do something thrilling and foolish for a change. Upon hearing this, Will drags her to the beach behind the house to go skinny dipping. Sylvia's hesitant at first, but soon joins him in the water, and the two enjoy their time together. The pair later returns to the mansion through different doors to avoid suspicion. At that moment, the party is interrupted by the timekeepers, who found Will's location by tracking his newly purchased car. Will is then taken to a private office for interrogation, but when he tells them about Henry timing out on purpose, they don't believe him and siphon away most of his time. Will thinks that was selfish. Will is now left with only 2 hours, which is barely enough for booking and processing his ticket back home. Just then, Vice and Sylvia come to check on the situation. Will takes advantage of the distraction to beat the timekeepers up. What goes around comes around, and steal a gun. He then uses it to grab Sylvia as his hostage, and they run through the back door to leave in his car. However, Will gets distracted by a security camera while driving and runs over a spike strip at high speed. This causes the vehicle to swerve violently and crash by the roadside. Both Will and Sylvia fall unconscious, and minutes later, they're found by Fortis and his men. The gang immediately begins stealing the rich girl's time until they hear the timekeepers approaching towards the spot. They then make a run for it, leaving Sylvia with only half an hour. When they wake up, Sylvia freaks out at the little time she has left and asks Will for help. The latter finds it ironic how a rich girl is now in favor of sharing. Come here, river. But he helps her anyway. After this, the two head towards Dayton on foot, hoping to get some time in return for Sylvia's expensive earrings. They soon reach a pawn shop and sell off the jewelry, but only get 2 days in exchange. Next, they go to a payphone and Will makes Sylvia call her father. Agent Leon, who had anticipated this, is present at the Vice household and picks up the phone. An unfazed Will demands that he be given 1,000 years in exchange for the girl. However, he wants the ransom to be distributed to the timeline in the ghetto, and not for himself. It turns out the timeline is a form of social welfare system where the needy people of the ghetto can get life-saving time. After the call ends, Leon informs Mr. Vice about the situation, but the rich guy looks hesitant. It is obvious that he, despite having a bottomless pit of wealth, doesn't want to give away any time to the poor. All I have to say to the poor is bye-bye. Bye. On the other hand, Will takes Sylvia to his apartment where the duo spends the night together. I will rock your body till the end of time, says Will. The next morning, Will intently watches the timeline building from his window, but even after several hours, no time is added. This makes it clear that the greedy businessman Vice has no intention to pay the ransom. Sylvia is deeply hurt by her father's lack of care, but also begins to see that he became rich by stomping on other people's rights. This changes her mind, and she decides to stay back and work together with Will. However, she wants to have one last conversation back home, so Will gives her the stolen gun to protect herself while he watches from the corner. Just as Sylvia is throwing a barrage of insults to her father on the phone, she notices Agent Leon approaching Will. She thus hurriedly comes out of the booth and shoots the timekeeper in the arm. Will then takes the chance to check Leon's timer, only to learn that he doesn't keep much time to discourage thieves. In an act of generosity, Will gives him some time so that his co-workers can rescue him. The two fugitives then escape in Leon's car, while the timekeeper is soon rescued by his colleagues. Sometime later, Will uses the government car to pretend to be a timekeeper. He spots a rich lady driving towards New Greenwich and forces her to stop by the road. He then proceeds to steal her earrings and most of her time before running away in her car. Once they're far enough from town, they stop the car to watch the news, and they discover that they're now wanted people. Following this, the two decide to go all in and help the poor people by robbing a Dayton time bank owned by the Weiss family. They first jack a truck and crash it right into the bank, where they steal as many time capsules as they can. The poor people also join in the looting, and by the time the timekeepers arrive, there's nothing left. After helping out a few close friends, Will takes the stolen time capsules to the timeline. He then hands them over to the clerk, asking him to distribute it among anyone in need. As the days pass by, Will and Sylvia begin robbing time banks all over the place, and their adventures regularly appear on the news. Can't stop the feeling, says Will. A week later, Leon and his men finally locate Will's apartment apartment and set out to arrest them. However, as the timekeepers approach, Will and Sylvia manage to sneak out through a window. It doesn't take long for Leon to realize that the fugitives are on the run, and he begins chasing them, but the duo quickly gets into a local bus, and Will bribes the driver to speed away. A few hours later, Will and Sylvia check in at a hotel, paying extra to have all the rooms, as well as bribing the receptionist to keep her mouth shut. A client comes in seconds later to book a hotel room. Although he's informed that there are no available rooms currently, he catches a quick glimpse of Will and Sylvia going upstairs. Later, the Minutemen begin threatening people on the streets for info on Will and Sylvia. Fortis even kills an innocent bystander to show how serious he is. This forces the man who was earlier in the hotel to come forward and confess what he saw. At the hotel, Will and Sylvia learn that the reward for their heads is 10 years, which they consider pretty insulting. "I'm worth at least 500 years, says Will. Suddenly, Fortis bursts into the room with his men and holds the couple at gunpoint. The gangster then explains that the authorities leave him alone because he steals from his own people in Dayton. This is why he is now forced to help them restore order for the rich. But rather than killing Will in cold blood, Fortis wants something more thrilling. He challenges him to a time fight, a battle done in an arm wrestling style position where each person holds the other person's cock. Their hand. It's a contest where one can pull as much time from the other person while not letting their own time get pulled. Will agrees to this challenge and initially allows Fortis to drain most of his time. But when the gangster lowers his guard for a moment, he switches up his intensity, "I want you back," and siphons all of Fortis's time in one sweeping move. By the time the timekeepers arrive at the hotel, Will and Sylvia are already gone and Fortis has timed out. Sometime later, Will notices that the prices of essential commodities and loan rates are being raised faster to make up for the new time on the streets. Their little robberies aren't making a difference. They would now need a whole million years to even make a crack. Fortunately, Sylvia knows where to find such an amount. The next day, Weiss is worried about the situation and goes to work surrounded by more bodyguards than usual. Just then, they detect a threat, but it turns out to be Sylvia, announcing that she wants to surrender. Weiss believes his daughter and welcomes her with open arms, but this distraction allows Will to sneak up behind him and take him as a hostage. Then, the duo takes him to his office and makes him open the safe where he keeps a capsule with 1 million years. Weiss points out that flooding the wrong zone with 1 million years could cripple the system, but Will says that's exactly what he wants to happen. "Perfect," he says. After locking the businessman in his own office, the duo escapes, but shortly afterwards, the news of their robbery reaches the timekeepers. Agent Leon goes after them while ordering his men to block the bridge that goes from Greenwich to Dayton. But in his rush, Leon forgets to get his daily pay and is now left with barely an hour in his timer. Meanwhile, Will ignores the hail of bullets coming towards him from the timekeepers and drives through the time zone barrier to the other side, forcing his way into the ghetto. Once he and Sylvia are in Dayton, Will leaves his vehicle and gives the million-year capsule to a little girl who lives on the streets. Leon arrives moments later, and the two fugitives pretend to surrender. A smug Leon thinks he's won, but at that moment, the timeline announces that there's plenty of time for everyone. An eager crowd fills the street, getting in Leon's way and allowing the fugitives to escape. Shortly after, Leon somehow gets into his car and goes after the robbers, but when they cross another barrier, he has to follow them on foot. Eventually, he catches up to them, and Will guesses that the timekeeper used to be from the ghetto too. Leon confirms this and explains that he worked hard to get out, which is how things should be. But when the agent tries to arrest them, Will points out that there's no point, because he and Sylvia only have a few minutes left. This makes Leon check his own timer, and he realizes that he doesn't have time either, because he didn't collect his pay. Seconds later, his clock times out, and Leon drops dead right there on the road. "You're tearing up my heart," says Will. With less than a minute left in their timers, Will and Sylvia share a passionate kiss. However, he soon realizes that the timekeepers have time in their vehicles, so he rushes to Leon's car to take some for himself. He then runs back to Sylvia and they meet halfway, allowing them to share time before death catches them. Back in Greenwich, Weiss has given up and tells his employees not to do anything because everything is going to be over. Newscasts all over the nation show how people have taken to the streets, the factories lie idle, and people are crossing the zones to make it to the new Greenwich. Authorities swear everything is under control, but everyone knows the system will soon collapse. At the timekeeper's office, the employees decide to go home because there's nothing they can do. Will and Sylvia are never caught, and they start going after bigger banks to keep the old system from coming back.
Brozone's back, baby!
Out. Thank you for watching.